Yo guys, welcome to my build guide for Earthquake Totems. In this video, I am going to go over my build and how I set it up. I'm going to go over the strengths and weaknesses, go over the tree and my character. Stay tuned while I show you guys my ideas for this build and how it works in the endgame mapping. In the background, I'm just going to have me running a map and stuff, and then I'm going to explain to you guys like the strengths and weaknesses of the build, and then I'm going to go through my gear and show you guys what I've done. If you guys enjoy this type of content, hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help the channel out a lot. So first I'm going to talk about the strengths of the build. I did this build as my league starter, and I had like the most smooth leveling experience going through the main story and getting to maps. I never died once, and I just cruised. I found every single one of my upgrades just progressing through the game, and I never had to trade for any weapons or gear till I got to maps. It's been a little while, but I'm pretty sure I made it all the way to maps in the 4-link pretty smoothly. When we get to maps, it's kind of a little different than most builds. Like, this is a totem build, so it's got a slower playstyle, so if you enjoy that playstyle, then you might like it. It has the safety net of being able to hide behind your totems as well, because in this build we're going to be using 4 totems. The one totems to buffs our damage, and the ones to do the damage. With this build we use War Chief totems as well, because it gives us pretty much an extra support gem with like 40% more damage after we get all the buff effect from totem nodes on the tree. Another strength of this character, it's relatively cheap and you can get into red maps pretty easily. Once you get into red maps, you're going to definitely have to spend a little bit of currency, like maybe like 100 C worth, and you should be able to get into mid to high tier red maps, which is pretty good. Like, it's great for a starter. The only thing you need is the Miori Iorki, I hope I said that right, and Maven's Belt. They're usually quite cheap. Maven's Belt, I think, cost me like 15 C, but it was really early in the league. Now it's probably not that much. For the cons of the build, it's not really the best for bossing, I don't think. I think the damage is there, but the problem is the bosses move around all the time, so by the time you hit the ground with your Earthquake and wait for the Aftershock, the boss will be out of the Aftershock, and that's where like the bulk of your damage comes from. Another con is if you don't like the slower mapping style, then this might not be for you either. It's kind of slow moving, but it's like a consistent speed. It's not like you're flying and then stopping and then flying and stopping. It's kind of like, I call it a Terminator build where it just keeps going. And lastly, your damage can be a little bit rough until you get a 6-link. A 5-link would be good. I will get you into lab if you're into farming, or get into red tier maps for sure, but a 6-link will up your damage like massively. Now let's get into the build, and I'll show you guys what my thoughts were behind it and how I scale my damage and everything. Alright guys, for this portion of the video I'm going to go over like my gear and gems and my skill tree and show you guys my ideas that I had with the build. So with these totems, the Earthbreaker totems, we have less attack speed with them, but as you level it, like from at level 1 it has like 20% less damage and it gets up to 0. But with this less attack speed, I wanted to utilize that in a way where it would be kind of like a buff. So that's why I decided to go with Anomalous Earthquake, because Anomalous Earthquake makes it so your Aftershock's a little bit longer. So you can have a slower weapon and it won't really do much, because I use the Miori Iorki. I don't know how to pronounce that, but yes, I use that. So I figured with the Anomalous Earthquake, it'll make my duration longer, but it also gives me 60% increased damage. So I was like, alright, well how can I buff that damage even more to utilize the slowness of it? So I got the Helm Enchant Earthquake deals 8% increased damage per 0.1 seconds of duration. So it takes 1.2 seconds for the Aftershock to go away, so 8 times 12 is, I think, 94. So that Helm Enchant gives me 94% increased damage. So I figured utilize like all this buffing with a slow attack. And so what I wanted to do with this to maximize my damage with it is have my attack speed, attack time at 1.2 I mean, attacks per second. So what it would do is when it attacks, you don't want your weapon to attack again before the Aftershock. You want it to be like as close to the Aftershock as you can, but without it hitting before the Aftershock. If not, you won't get the Aftershock and you'll actually lose a lot of damage. So while leveling, I used Earthquake with Melee Fizz, Earthbreaker, and Ruthless. And the stun from Ruthless is like a nice little defensive thing. And then with my War Chief totem setup, you get a huge amount of damage buff with that. I'll show you guys when I go into the tree after. So I utilize this to increase my damage of my Earthquake. So I'd use stuff like Maim. You have to use multiple totems because you only have 2 totems. So this will allow you to summon 2 more. That will get you your War Chiefs out. And then Brutality and Pulverize as well. And that will help with your damage as well. But with the 4-link, I would just go with Ancestral War Chief, Multi-Totem, Brutality, and Maim. And then that will allow your Earthquake to do more damage because the enemies will be maimed. So another thing with this build that I use is Maven's Belt. Because what this will do is make it so your endurance charges become brutal charges. So brutal charges is for every brutal charge you have, you get 3% chance to do triple damage. So it's kind of like crit because I'm Resolute Technique with this build. So it kind of acts as like a little crit thing. So right now I have 7 endurance charges. So it's 21% chance to do triple damage. If you get, I think, Warlord boots, you can get an extra endurance charge as well. So for the rest of my gear, I have Vulnerability with Hex Touch and Stormbrand. So this, just throw out a Stormbrand, it will curse everything for you. Over here, I use Leap Slam, Blood and Sand, Faster Attacks, and Fortify. That just gives me another defensive layer. And then I have Pride and Enduring Cry. You need Enduring Cry for generating your charges. It'll be a lot easier once you get to the one part of your Ascendancy where you gain endurance charges every second when you cast a Warcry recently. So for my tree, I pretty much just went for as much life and damage as I can. I guess that's kind of the standard, but a few things to note that I took was I'd use this Jewel Spire of Stone right here because it will prevent your totems from being stunned. The reason why I used it is because your totems attack so slow that they would just get stun locked all the time. And this gives you quite a bit of totem life because there's a lot of strength nodes around. It's like one here, 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 and I think there's another one somewhere. I can't remember. So yeah, that will help with your totem survivability. Then we get the life wheel here, life wheel up here, some AoE here. We get tons of AoE with this build too. And then get dual totem here, life wheel there for some chaos res. I'm trying to get my chaos res like above 0. And then we need to get all the endurance charges, but you can get those a little later when you start working towards having Maven's Belt. So we grab life wheel here, we get Resolute Technique. So you can't, your hits can't be evaded, but you can't crit either. So that's why we kind of use the brutal charges to give us what I would call a little bit of crit, even though it's not technically crit. I grab the mace wheels because a lot of this gives you like more stun and more damage and stuff. I kind of built up with stuns. I didn't really plan for it at the beginning, but I noticed like how often my totems were stunning. So it was kind of nice. So we work our way down here. Make sure you get Call to Arms. Once you get that, you can put your War Cry on your left click. So Enduring Cry. And then when you run around, it'll keep your charges up. And then I grabbed Imbalanced Guard too to give us another like defensive layer. So we will have like a bunch of mitigation through that as well. I was planning on doing a lot of physical damage taken as fire as well. But those helmets are quite expensive. And then we just grab mace nodes here, here, and then this is 2-hand nodes. And then you're going to want to get Panopticon. There we go. Because this will give you an increased buff effect of your ancestral totems. So like the Earthbreaker support gives you more AoE, but the War Chief totem also gives you a more multiplier on your damage. So we try to like stack that up a lot as well. And then for Jewel here, I was going to put, I think it's called a Thread of Hope, a medium one. And this will allow me to get this, so it will give me more damage while in Blood Stance. I can get a minimum Frenzy charge, and I can grab this health node as well. But I haven't got that far yet. I don't think I'm going to get that far yet. So, yeah. So that's my tree. And then I anoint Watchtowers because this gives me more damage, and then it prevents my totems from going below base value. So it essentially makes my totem freeze immune. So if you have like the expedition, if you have the expedition for monsters hits always freeze, then your totems can actually do that. If you didn't have that, then they'd just be perma-frozen. And then for my Ascendancy, where's the thingy? I started by taking this one, because it gives you increased effective buffs by your totems. And then I did this one. Just makes it so monsters deal less damage around you and take more damage. Then I went here because by the time you get into maps, resist and stuff starts to really hurt you. And here's your physical damage taken as fire. So it makes you a little more tanky and gives you life regen and stuff. Life recovery, which also affects your flash, your life leech, your life regen itself. And then you go up here to get your endurance charges. Once you get this one, then you can get Maven's Belt as well. But other than that, that's pretty much how my build is working. It's doing pretty good. It still needs a little bit more gear. But for my gear, I have this weapon. I'm tired of trying to pronounce it. Try to get a good rolled one, and then you can get 30% quality on it. There's two ways you can do this. You can use Einhard to corrupt it, or you can have, I believe it's Hillick and Fortification at level 3, and then do Mastermind, there we go, to get them to level 4, and then that will put it up to 30% as well. Helmet, just resists in life. You can definitely get better. If you can get fire damage, or physical damage taken as fire, that would be good. This is my chest now. It's nothing too special. I actually have one I'm trying to 6-link here. This one's a little better, just gives more reduction, a little bit more life, and then it'll allow me to get a different ring here, as I want to get something like this. This ring I just used a Harvest Craft for Chaos Res, and this popped out, and I was like, oh, alright, I'll take it. So then physical damage up as well, so 5 to 9 physical damage to attacks. I crafted that, and then, so that gives you a pretty good damage boost. So I want something similar to that over here, but I do need a dex roll because dexterity is a little hard to come by in this build. Amulet, I just went with resist and life, physical damage to attacks, and get some stats. Mainly dex, but all stats work as well. Gloves, it's just resist, physical damage, a little bit of attack speed, and some life. This is Maven's Belt, which turns your endurance charges into brutal charges, and just gives you some life, armor, and fire res. Between this belt and your node, you don't really have to worry about fire res at all. And then boots, I just went with lots of life and resist and movement speed. And you can also get an endurance charge with your boots, but those things get really, really expensive. And my flasks are nothing special. I just have a bubbling divine life flask, a sanctified life flask, so gain 1 charge when you're hit by an enemy. I kind of like that mod personally, but I rolled this early on in the league. I was like, yes, this is amazing. This is the best adrenaline. And it's like, oh, they really nerfed this into the ground. So instead of like 30% movement speed, it's only 6. I use an aquamarine flask. That's how I do my freeze removal, and I have my bleed removal with it as well. And then just a sacred mana flask, a white one. Essentially, you just want to get a enduring sanctified mana flask. You're gonna need a mana flask because you actually chew through quite a bit of mana. That's why I'm not running another aura. If I had one of those, I might be able to get away with it with Enlighten as well, but apparently they're really expensive this league. Because my totems cost 62 mana, because technically with 6-link they're in a 7-link, because it comes with level 15 Pulverize. And then for auras, I run Pride and Blood and Sand. So I go on Blood Stance with that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my build. It's pretty good. I don't mind it. It's a good league starter. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. This is my lab running character as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Help the channel out a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.